Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into a heavy but important topic, why most men will die miserable. Now before you click away thinking this is just another doom and gloom rant, let me assure you, this isn't about pointing fingers or wallowing in despair. It's about understanding the forces at play in our lives, the traps we fall into, and most importantly, how we can start to break free. This is a deep dive, so grab a coffee, get comfortable, and let's unpack this together. If you find value in this, hit that like button, subscribe, and let's get into it. First, let's set the stage. The title might sound extreme. Most men dying miserable, really. But when you look at the data, the trends, and the stories we hear every day, it's not as far-fetched as it seems. Men today are facing challenges that are unique to our time, but they're also grappling with timeless struggles that have been swept under the rug for too long. We're talking about skyrocketing rates of loneliness, mental health crises, suicide, addiction, and a pervasive sense of purposelessness. The stats are sobering. In the US, men account for about 75% of suicides, with middle-aged men being the most affected. Loneliness is at epidemic levels, with studies showing over 60% of men report feeling isolated or lacking meaningful connections. And then there's the opioid crisis, alcoholism, and the quiet despair of men who feel they're just going through the motions. Why is this happening? Why are so many men struggling to find happiness, meaning, or even just a reason to get out of bed? Let's start with society's expectations. From the moment boys are born, they're bombarded with messages about what it means to be a man. Be strong, don't cry. Provide, protect, succeed. These aren't inherently bad ideals, but they've been twisted into a rigid script that leaves little room for vulnerability or failure. Men are taught to suppress their emotions, to man up when life gets tough. But here's the problem. Life is tough. It's messy, unpredictable, and full of setbacks. When you're conditioned to bottle up your pain, to never ask for help, that pressure builds up like a volcano. Eventually, it erupts, sometimes in anger, sometimes in addiction, sometimes in complete withdrawal from the world. I remember a friend of mine, let's call him Jake. Jake was the guy everyone looked up to. Great job, charming, always had a smile. But one night, after a few drinks, he broke down and admitted he felt like a fraud. He was drowning in debt. His marriage was falling apart, and he had no one to talk to because he didn't want to seem weak. Jake's story isn't unique. It's the story of millions of men who feel trapped by the mask they've been forced to wear. Now let's talk about that mask. Society doesn't just expect men to be stoic, it rewards them for it. Think about the archetypes we celebrate. The lone wolf, the hustler, the guy who grinds 80 hours a week and never complains. We glorify this image of self-reliance to the point where asking for help is seen as failure. But humans aren't built for isolation. We're social creatures, wired for connection. When men buy into the myth that they have to go it alone, they cut themselves off from the very thing that could save them: community. Studies show that strong social bonds are one of the biggest predictors of happiness and longevity. Yet men are less likely than women to maintain close friendships as they age. Why? Because we are taught that vulnerability is weakness, that leaning on others makes you less of a man. It's a vicious cycle. You feel miserable, but you can't talk about it, so you isolate yourself, which makes you more miserable. And it's not just emotional isolation. Let's talk about the economic pressures. For generations, men were defined by their ability to provide. The breadwinner model was the gold standard. Get a good job, buy a house, support your family. But the world has changed. Wages have stagnated, housing prices have skyrocketed, and job security is a thing of the past. The average man today is working harder than ever, but it feels like he's running on a hamster wheel. You're told to hustle, to climb the corporate ladder, but even if you do everything right, you might still be one layoff away from disaster. I saw this firsthand with my cousin Mike. He worked 60-hour weeks at a tech firm, thinking he was building a future. Then out of nowhere, his department was downsized. He was 40, with a mortgage and 2 kids, and suddenly he was starting from scratch. The stress didn't just hit his bank account, it crushed his sense of identity. When your worth is tied to your paycheck, losing your job feels like losing yourself. But it's not just about money, it's about purpose. Men are wired to seek meaning, to feel like their lives matter. Historically, that purpose came from clear roles. You were a warrior, a farmer, a craftsman, a father. Today, those roles are less defined. Technology has automated many traditional jobs, and cultural shifts have blurred the lines of what it means to be a man. Don't get me wrong, change isn't bad. Women's liberation, for example, has been a net positive, giving everyone more freedom to define their lives. But for men, the transition hasn't come with a new playbook. We're told the old ways are outdated. But what's the alternative? Be a modern man? What does that even mean? Without a clear sense of purpose, men drift. They fill the void with distractions, video games, porn, alcohol, anything to numb the feeling that they're not living up to their potential. Speaking of distractions, let's talk about the digital age. Technology has changed the game in ways we're only starting to understand. On one hand, it's connected us like never before. You can message someone across the globe in seconds, but it's also disconnected us in profound ways. Social media, for all its benefits, has become a comparison trap. You scroll through Instagram and see guys with six-pack abs, private jets, and perfect families. It's a curated lie, but it's hard not to feel like you're falling behind. Men are bombarded with images of what success looks like, and it's always just out of reach. This isn't just about envy, it's about the psychological toll. Studies show that heavy social media use is linked to anxiety and depression, especially in men who feel pressure to measure up. And then there's the dopamine hijack. Apps are designed to keep you hooked, to keep you scrolling instead of living. How many hours have you lost to mindless browsing? How many goals have you put off because you were too busy chasing likes? Now, let's get into something a bit more controversial. The dating landscape. If you're a guy watching this, you've probably noticed that dating today feels like navigating a minefield. The rise of apps like Tinder and Bumble has turned relationships into a numbers game, where attention is the currency. For the average man, it's brutal. Studies show that on dating apps, the top 10% of men get the vast majority of matches, while the bottom 50% are lucky to get a response. This isn't about blaming women, it's about the system. Apps reward superficial traits like looks and charisma, leaving most guys feeling invisible. And it's not just about getting a date. The cultural narrative around relationships has shifted. Men are told they need to be emotionally available, financially successful, physically fit, and endlessly supportive, all while navigating a world where traditional roles are questioned. The pressure to be everything to everyone is exhausting. And when it doesn't work out, men internalize it as failure. But here's the kicker. It's not just about romantic relationships. It's about the broader erosion of connection. Men today are less likely to have close friends, to be part of a community, or to feel like they belong anywhere. Think about it. When was the last time you had a deep, honest conversation with another guy? Not just banter about sports or work, but real talk about your fears, your dreams, your struggles. For most men, those conversations are rare. Part of it is cultural, again that stoic ideal, but part of it is structural. As we've moved toward urban, individualistic societies, the spaces where men used to bond have disappeared. Think of the old days. Men had lodges, churches, unions, even the local bar. These were places to connect, to share, to feel human. Today, we're more likely to be staring at a screen than sitting across from a friend. Let's pause for a second and acknowledge something. This isn't just a men's problem. Women face their own struggles, and I'm not here to say one group has it worse. But the challenges men face are unique, and they're not talked about enough. When was the last time you saw a mainstream conversation about male loneliness or the pressure to provide? It's like these issues are invisible, or worse, dismissed as whining. If a man speaks up about feeling lost, he's told to toughen up or check his privilege. That's not just unfair, it's dangerous. When you silence half the population, you're not solving problems, you're creating them. And the consequences are all around us. Broken families, rising crime, men checking out of society altogether. In Japan they have a term for this, hikikomori, men who withdraw from the world and live in isolation. It's not just a Japanese problem, it's a global one. So what's driving this misery? We've touched on a few factors: societal expectations, economic pressures, the digital age, the dating scene. But let's dig deeper into the psychological side. One of the biggest culprits is shame. Men are conditioned to feel ashamed of their weaknesses, their failures, their emotions. If you're not succeeding, you're not a man. If you're struggling, you're not a man. If you're lonely, you're not a man. This shame is a silent killer. It keeps men from seeking help, from admitting they're hurting, from taking the first step toward healing. I'll never forget a conversation I had with a therapist who worked with men. He told me that most of his clients waited until they were at rock bottom before reaching out. Why? Because they were too ashamed to admit they needed help. They'd rather suffer in silence than risk being seen as weak, and that brings us to mental health. The stigma around men seeking therapy or counseling is still very real. Despite all the progress we've made, many men see therapy as something for broken people, not for them. But here's the truth. Everyone's carrying something. Trauma, stress, grief. It's part of being human. The difference is that women are generally more open about seeking help, while men are taught to tough it out. The result? Men are less likely to get diagnosed with depression or anxiety, but they're more likely to self-medicate with alcohol, drugs, or reckless behavior. The National Institute of Mental Health reports that men are 4 times more likely than women to die by suicide. That's not a coincidence. It's a direct result of a culture that tells men their pain doesn't matter. Now, let's talk about the body. Physical health is another piece of the puzzle. Men are more likely to neglect their health, skipping doctor visits, ignoring symptoms, eating poorly. Part of it is the tough guy mentality, but part of it is practical. Men are often so consumed with work and responsibilities that they put their health on the back burner. And when you're stressed, overworked, and isolated, your body takes a hit. Heart disease, obesity, diabetes. These are hitting men hard, and they're not just physical problems. They're tied to lifestyle, to the way men are living in a world that's squeezing them dry. I knew a guy, Tom, who was in his late 30s, seemed healthy, ran marathons, but he was working insane hours, barely sleeping, and one day he had a heart attack. Stress, the doctor said. Tom survived, but it was a wake-up call. How many men are ignoring those warning signs right now? Let's shift gears and talk about fatherhood, because this is a big one. For many men, being a father is their greatest source of purpose. It's a chance to build something, to leave a legacy, to be a hero to someone. But fatherhood today comes with challenges our grandfathers never faced. Divorce rates are high, around 40–50% in many Western countries, and men are more likely to lose primary custody of their kids. The family court system, while not inherently anti-male, often leaves men feeling like they're fighting an uphill battle. And even for men who stay married, the demands of modern parenting can be overwhelming. You're expected to be an equal partner in childcare, to be emotionally present, to coach Little League and help with homework, all while working a full-time job and keeping the bills paid. It's a lot. And when men feel like they're failing as fathers, it cuts deep. It's not just a role, it's their identity. But what about the men who don't have kids? For them, the search for meaning can be even harder. Society doesn't give childless men a clear path to fulfillment. If you're not a father, not a provider, not a success story, then who are you? This is where a lot of guys get lost. They start to feel like they're drifting through life with no anchor. Some turn to work, others to hobbies, but too often they turn to vices. Pornography, for example, has become a massive issue. It's not just about adult content. It's about the way it rewires the brain, kills motivation, and distorts relationships. Studies estimate that 70% of men view porn regularly, and for many, it's a coping mechanism for loneliness or stress. But it's a trap. It promises relief, but delivers emptiness. Let's talk about work for a moment, because it's another pressure point. Men are still judged heavily by their careers. Your job isn't just what you do, it's who you are. Doctor, lawyer, entrepreneur. You're a winner, retail worker, delivery driver. You're a loser. It's a harsh reality, but it's how the world works. And with the gig economy, automation, and globalization, the job market is tougher than ever. Men are competing not just with each other, but with machines and overseas labor. The result is a sense of instability. Even if you have a good job, you're one algorithm away from obsolescence. And for men who don't have a clear career path, the judgment is relentless. I've seen guys in their 20s and 30s paralyzed by the fear of picking the wrong career, so they don't pick anything. They just float, hoping something will click. But the longer you float, the harder it is to start. Now let's address the elephant in the room, masculinity itself. There's a narrative out there that masculinity is inherently toxic, that men need to unlearn everything about being a man. I get where this comes from. There are behaviors like aggression or entitlement that can be harmful. But the blanket condemnation of masculinity leaves men in a bind. If being strong is bad, if being ambitious is bad, if being protective is bad, then what's left? Men are told to redefine themselves, but no one's offering a clear vision of what that looks like. The result is confusion and resentment. Some men double down on traditional roles, clinging to outdated ideals. Others reject masculinity entirely, but that often leaves them feeling aimless. The truth is, masculinity isn't the problem. It's the lack of guidance on how to channel it. Strength, courage, honor, these are timeless virtues. The challenge is applying them in a world that's changed. So where does all this leave us? We've got men who are lonely, overworked, undervalued, and disconnected. Men who feel like they're failing at life, even when they're doing their best. Men who are carrying shame, suppressing pain, and chasing distractions that only make things worse. It's no wonder so many are miserable. But here's the thing, it doesn't have to be this way. Misery isn't inevitable. The first step is awareness, understanding the forces that are pushing you down. The second step is action. You can't change society overnight, but you can change your life. Start small. Reach out to a friend, go to the gym, talk to a therapist, set a goal, even if it's tiny. Every step you take is a rebellion against the script that says you're doomed. Let's talk about some practical ways to break the cycle. First, prioritize connection. Find people who lift you up, who challenge you to be better. It doesn't have to be a big group, just one or two guys you can be real with. Join a club, a team, a church, anything that gets you out of your head and into the world. Second, take care of your body. Exercise isn't just about looking good, it's about feeling good. Even a 20-minute walk can shift your mood. Eat real food, not processed junk. Sleep like your life depends on it, because it does. Third, find something that gives you purpose. It doesn't have to be your job. Volunteer, learn a skill, mentor someone. Purpose comes from contribution, from knowing you're making a difference, even in a small way. And finally, don't be afraid to ask for help. Therapy, counseling, support groups, these aren't signs of weakness, they're tools for survival. Now I want to address the younger guys watching this. If you're in your teens or 20s, you're at a crossroads. The world is going to try to sell you a lot of lies about what success looks like, about what makes you a man. Don't buy it. Success isn't a mansion or 1,000,000 followers. It's waking up every day knowing you're living on your terms. Start building habits now that will carry you through life. Learn to say no, learn to fail. Learn to love yourself, not because you're perfect, but because you're trying. The choices you make now will shape the man you become. Don't let the world decide that for you. And for the older guys, the ones who feel like they've missed their shot, listen up. It's not too late. You're not defined by your past. Every day is a chance to start over. Maybe you didn't get the career you wanted, or the family you dreamed of. That doesn't mean your life is over. Find something to fight for. It could be your health, your kids, your community. The greatest men in history weren't the ones who had it easy. They were the ones who kept going, no matter what. You have that in you. Tap into it. Let's wrap this up with a hard truth. The world isn't going to fix this for you. Society, for all its talk about progress, doesn't care about your happiness. It cares about your output, your compliance, your silence. If you want to avoid dying miserable, you have to take responsibility for your life. That doesn't mean you have to do it alone. Reach out, build your tribe. But it does mean you have to take the first step. No one's coming to save you. But here's the good news. You don't need saving. You're stronger than you think. You're capable of more than you know. The misery that's waiting for most men, it's not your destiny. You can choose a different path. Thank you for watching this far. This was a long one, but I hope it hit home. If it did, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment below. Let me know your thoughts, your struggles, your wins. Let's keep this conversation going. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and I'll see you in the next one. Stay strong, stay real, and let's build a life worth living.